Hey, let's talk about let's talk for a little bit. So I so this has kind of been on my heart for a while, and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna talk about why my business failed, and I really want to do this because um we have this thing in our society where it's like perfection has to be a thing. Um, and we have, creators who, God bless them, we're online and we're showing our perfect lives, and we're showing our perfect business and our perfect families, and everything it just has to be picture perfect. And I'm gonna tell you, life ain't perfect, right? Um, I did a video a couple of months ago. I did a video last year. Look at that. It's 2024. I could say last year. So I did a video last year, my birthday, and we were talking about my journey of becoming 50. I'll be 50 this year. It's crazy. But, reflecting on a lot of things. And, you know, one thing is that for me, I'm always going to be real about my stuff, because when it comes to things like failure, I embrace it. And the reason I embrace failure is because failure helps us to grow. Because with failure, we learn. With failure, we have opportunities to reflect and reset, to learn, to revise, to grow, try something new, do something again, do something we've never done before. It makes us stronger, right? It makes us resilient. It makes us resilient. And some of us are afraid to fail, but then we wonder why at the slightest things in our lives that we break. And we need to build resiliency. We really do. So I had this agency, and it's called Distilla Comfort Center. I'm putting it all out there, right? It's called Distilla Comfort Center. It is a nonprofit, and it supports women and children who have suffered abuse. Now, it's not completely closed. Things have just shifted. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about why. So, when we talk about where things are, we need to understand, where it's been, how it started. So, I started the agency because I always had this idea, this thought, or I felt that I was compelled to do this thing, right? Felt that this was part of my call. Because when I was younger, right, when I was 15, I told a cousin that I was very, very close to. She's like a big sister of mine. I told her that I was going to one day use my life to help other women realize that they could do so much more with their lives, right? That whatever has happened to them is not who they are, but you could just do so much more. And I remember saying something like, I could see myself growing up and going around and talking to women about, all the great things that they could do in their life. And, in spite of the fact that, they went through whatever they went through, right? Something like that. Now, the reason this happened is because I had just revealed that I went through years of abuse, like over a decade. Mind you, I was 15 and I already went through well over a decade of abuse, most of my life. And no one knew. Nobody knew. People say they know. People say they had an inkling. But the truth is, I always say, if you didn't do nothing about it, you really didn't know, right? And if you didn't say nothing, then did you really know? Nonetheless, nobody knew. Nobody knew. I was a national athlete. I was a junior Olympian. I was an honor student. I was doing like great things, from at a very young age. So nobody had any idea. They just thought I was like this great outgoing student and athlete and everything else. So nobody else paid any attention to anything. So I just didn't know. But it was my basketball coach. It was actually my basketball coach at Irvington High School in New Jersey, tell it all, who had the gall to flat out ask me questions that I answered. Very uncomfortable questions. Very uncomfortable questions. But as uncomfortable as they were, I answered. And it was difficult, but I answered. And that's the only reason why I ever told. And to be honest, it was, as hard as it was a relief, because here it was, this woman sat down and pulled me aside, and she listened, and she talked, but she listened more than anything else. And all I ever wanted was for my abuse to stop. Like, I prayed and prayed, God, just let this stop. I really used to just be in my room and just be like, God, that's all I want. I just want this to stop. And because of her, it did. It really did. Now, I got a lot of help. I got help that was very helpful, and I got help that wasn't very helpful. But my basketball coach, she set the bar for me what help looked like, because what I prayed for came through her. And she listened, she asked questions, and then she brought in an additional help. She brought in like additional help, authorities, what have you, and went through the process of whatever needed to happen. And these people were very helpful. They made me feel safe. They made me feel secure. They made me feel hopeful. In spite of fear, because there was a lot of things to be fearful of. But in spite of all of that, I felt comforted and all of these things, right? So, I'm like, man, even then, I'm like, God is with me because things are moving. But then some things shifted, and then, I had other help. Other help came in. I don't know who these people were, but other help came in, and it did not have the same, it was not presented the same. And this help was more like speaking negative things into my life and over my life, right? And so we like to quote how there's life and death is in the power of the tongue. And let me tell you, they were speaking more death than life. And I refused to accept that. And because I refused to accept that, I was labeled as a rebel. And that's okay. I'll take that. But I really wasn't being a rebel. It's just the fact that I had already prayed for abuse to stop. And knowing that here it was that I prayed for something to stop, and then help came for it to stop. And then I was getting the help that I needed, but then additional help came. And it felt like that additional help was coming in the same form of the abuse that I had already prayed to get out of. I just didn't want that. And so I rejected it. Right? And because I rejected that, because I knew that I could, and the reason I knew that I could is because help already came to show me that I didn't have to keep dealing with what I asked to not deal with anymore, right? And the bar was already set. So I knew that help could be a certain way. So again, the bar was set. So when this person came in, or these people came in, and they weren't meeting that bar of expectation, I was like, yeah, I don't want this. I don't want this. And I don't want you speaking negative things into my life, because I've never been that way. And so I don't plan on being that way. Right. And so because of the negative things and that type of help, that, and seeing the difference between what real help looks like and what, bad help looks like, that's when I really made that decision. Was like, yeah, I really want to be on the, that good side of help, and make a difference. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. I really didn't know what it was going to look like, because I was 15. I just knew that I would be a voice, right? A voice to the voiceless, so to speak. I didn't know what it was going to look like, though. But over the years, God would use me in many different ways to be able to do that, whether it was working with those who were dying. I worked with a lot of people that was dying over the years, and those who were sick and ill, those who were in hospice. I did a lot of different things throughout my life, which I always say that, that was God's training ground for what would come later. I did a lot of crisis counseling and working in crisis intervention, and, just a lot of crazy stuff that kind of don't want to get into here. But all those things throughout my journey led me to a point to where later on I did something that I kind of forgot about, which was going to seminary. I had already gotten degrees in healthcare and degrees in business and degrees in human resources, and I don't know what else I have degrees in, but I was like 4 or 5 of them before I went to seminary. I was in the military and did all kinds of stuff in the military, and worked in the hospitals, and worked in the correction facilities, and crazy stuff, right? But then after I retired, when, I just wasn't thinking about it anymore and was already working in ministry for a little bit, I felt that, that God was calling me to seminary. So I went to seminary, which I tell you is one of the toughest things I think I've ever done. But as I was coming out of seminary, that feeling of like, hey, we're getting back to that thing again. I thought I was going to go into healthcare. I was like, man, God, when I retire from the military, I want to go into healthcare, and, I want to stay in healthcare, and I want to, be a CEO of this company and do all these other things. And it was like, a couple of things I wanted to do, and he allowed me to do those things when I retired, but then he pulled me off of them and was like, now you got to do what I've called you to do. I didn't know what that meant, but I went to seminary. All that stuff was over. I went to seminary. Coming out of seminary, I get the name for the agency, which is Dacilla Comfort Center. And I'm like, what is this? And then I start working on it. God literally gives me the plans. I'd be up writing at night, doing my homework and all that kind of stuff, writing at night. And this was after I had published my first book, because I published my first book before right around the time I was finishing seminary. But then I started working on the plans for this agency or this ministry. So I do this, I'm doing the research, I'm staying up late, and, putting plans together, wrote the business plan, wrote the plan for at least, 5 to 6 years out, right? Putting together, the articles for the board, roles and responsibilities for board members, all of these things, letters for, potential board members, inviting them to be board members. Like, everything was all put together, and even actually, filed everything with the state. Did everything that God was telling me to do, and everything was running smoothly. And here's the kicker. Things that was supposed to take months to do was happening in no time. It was happening in no time because I was following the plan that God gave me. And because I was doing it exactly the way he said to do it, it was happening in no time. Even though at the time, the people that he said to invite to be a part of the board, some responded, some did not, some said no, and that's okay. But things still moved the way he said it was going to move. Now, sounds good, right? Well, there were times I got discouraged, but I still kept moving. But then things were happening, right? Some people didn't believe what was supposed to happen, but I still kept moving and following the plan. We had doors open that were very, very unexpected. I actually announced the whole agency on a platform that God set up for me. I did nothing to open this door. I did not force this door open. God set it up, because when I wrote the book that he told me to write and finished it in the time frame he told me that it would be finished, I actually received a phone call from the city to be a keynote speaker. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a prank. I really did. The way they reached out. But it happened, and I was one of the keynote speakers, right? Well, it was on that platform that I said I was going to open up this facility, and even when I did that, I mean, people were like, let's connect. It was crazy. Again, everything that I did, it was what God told me to do, and it worked. And it worked in record-breaking time. Invited to events, took risk, and it worked. So what happened? During COVID, we opened up homes, and we were supposed to. It was part of the plan. But the way we opened up the home was not the way we were supposed to. We were supposed to open it, but the way we did it was not the way we were supposed to. I actually got sick during that time frame, and I received a phone call that someone was in trouble, and everything was like urgent, right? And what happened was I was in my office. We had opened up an office and everything, because I prayed for the office, and I was like, God, I need an office. I can't keep meeting people all over the place. Like, this is not working. And so literally got an office, and I was like, the office has to be a certain amount of money. I can't pay more than this. And it was like, boom, the invitation was in my mailbox to go check out an office space. I'm telling you, that's how it happened. I kid you not. Open up the office space, was paying things, months in advance. When we needed to open the home, the hope that I had, everything was urgent. And the plan was not followed. And there was no prayer. We were not on the same page. It was more of, this is what it should look like. This is what we should do. There was more discord. And it doesn't mean that we didn't help people. It's just that it was starting to cost me. And those who were present, not all, but some, those who were present, failed to realize that this was ministry and not just business. Because when it's ministry, we're doing things according to the plans that God has given us. And then we are doing what God has called for us to do. And we cannot deviate from that. We cannot do things on our own understanding. And so when you start having the mixture of, who's doing what, while we're doing it, who we're serving, how we're serving, it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. Because although it's a nonprofit, it just wasn't ministry anymore. And so things started to be mishandled. And by mishandled, meaning the ministry overall. We're still doing great work, don't get me wrong. We opened up 2 homes in the midst of COVID, but it wound up taking a toll on me, and it cost me greatly. It cost me greatly because I was coming out of pocket for everything, as more than people realize, because all the help that was present was more like that bad help, or like we'll say the not so great help that was present at the beginning of my abuse, right? Well, not at the beginning of my abuse, when I revealed that I was abused. At the beginning of the ministry, I had great help. But then as we started moving, it was like that help really wasn't the same. And so because the help really wasn't the same, and it wasn't meeting that expectation, things just really started to unravel. And, we would have meetings and we would try to do things, and everybody would come up with plans and we would make adjustments. And the more and more we would do things, over time I start realizing that this was deviating from the plan that God originally set. And because it was deviating from the plan that God set, this was why it ultimately failed. We still grew. Don't get me wrong, we grew. But all growth ain't good growth. It's not. And we did a lot of great things. And a lot of things that we did, I equated to God's grace. It was a lot of God's grace. Constantly praying about things, constantly praying to be able to help. We still had people that would show up from time to time, but I'm going to tell you, I went through hell and back trying to keep that together. And ultimately I went to God and was like, this is not it, because I pulled out that original plan that God gave me, and where I was looking at it. And part of that plan was, every quarter I would stop. Every quarter, I would have my rhythms of rest, right? But the greater intentional rhythms of rest came every quarter, and throughout those and during those quarterly periods, I would sit down and look at that plan to make sure that we was following God's plan. But after a while of trying to hold it together, because the help wasn't really my help, it just became so much to where that intentional review wasn't happening as much as it should have been happening. And because of that, that's how things start getting away. And then ultimately coming together and having more of like a board that's really managing things where they're not really managing things, and moving away from the ministry aspect. It's not working. That's not how ministry works. So that's why it failed. So, earlier this year I went to last year I started going to everyone. I was like, you know what? I'm shutting this down. We have this other place. We're after a while, I think we had 3 homes. And then at one point we had one home that we could actually purchase. And I was like, man, this would be fantastic, because the cost of this home is ideal. It's perfect. And it would work great. And it didn't, because The help did nothing. I promise you, they just didn't do anything. We had a family that showed up and gave a very, very, very large check, to try to help us out. And I mean, I was overwhelmed. I really was. I was overwhelmed. But all those who wanted to volunteer and, do all these things, they didn't pull through. Because here's the thing. Everybody wants to be in the spotlight, but nobody really wants to be in the trenches. Everybody wants to be in the spotlight, but nobody wants to be in the trenches. And this is what I mean. We want our name on something and we want to say we're a part of something, but we don't understand the weight that it takes to really make this thing work, right? So we want to say, oh my gosh, I want to help. I want to make a difference, but we don't understand what that means. We don't understand the work that it takes. We don't understand the weight of what it takes to actually make a difference, right? And especially when something is new. It's easy to go out and be a part of a ministry or be a part of a nonprofit or agency or whatever that looks like when something has been around for a long time, and they have, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that's coming in on a regular basis, or when you don't get it, you don't have to see that stuff, right? And they've been established for a long time. You don't have to be in the trenches for that. You can actually just kind of tack on at the, where it's at and keep, and we'll say like they have a good momentum. So you can kind of keep that momentum going. But when you got to kind of get the ignition going, nobody really wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that because it takes work. It takes work. And that work is dirty. That work is grimy. Nobody wants to do that. But we want to be a part of it. We want to be a part of it. Nonetheless, we lost that home. We lost that home. And even when we had to move into that place, no one was there to help move us in. I mean, we had stuff in our storage to move into that home when we first opened it. And it was hot. Arizona hot. It was hot. And at the time, I was late 40s. And I had a truck. And our stuff was on the second floor. We had 2 storage units. And I would go, and I had literally moved everything by myself. Couches, beds, dressers, tables, everything. A whole house. I moved a whole house out of storage and loaded into the truck by myself. Not a single soul helped. Not one person. Not one. Not a soul. And that wasn't the first time something like that would happen. That wasn't the first time. For every home that we had set up, I moved all that stuff into every home we had. Every home. In there, setting up beds, setting up, pulling in dressers, taking things up and down stairs, doing all of that. And so it gets to a point so where, I just went to God and was like, enough is enough. This cannot be it. This absolutely cannot be it, because I know that when you have something and you have a plan, it does not, it costs me and there's a sacrifice, but this ain't it. It can't be like this, because you send help, and help doesn't look like the help that I've been receiving. So there has to be another way, because it shouldn't kill me. And at this point, it's killing me. Because not only am I moving stuff by myself, I'm coming in here fixing stuff, I'm managing it, and taking care of the clients that are in here. I'm in here early in the morning. I'm in here late at night. I'm dealing with the crisis stuff. You know, I'm counseling, I'm coaching, well, ministering, because that's what ministry is, right? And then we're making sure that they're fed. We're making sure that they're clothed. We're making sure that, you know, there's money to take care of the bills. And when there isn't money that's coming in, because most of the time there wasn't, I just paid for it. Mind you, I still have a kid that's in medical school. I was like, this ain't it. This ain't it. See, we think that we think that people in ministry just have it all great. And I'm telling you, like, this is the stuff that people won't tell you. This is the stuff that people won't tell you. So I stepped back. I was like, let's just shut it all down. Just shut it down. We don't have to figure out another way to do this. And by figure out another way, I'm giving this back to God and telling him, like, no, listen, you're going to have to do something else, because this ain't it. This ain't it. And by this ain't it, meaning so many people have been a part of trying to build this up without the blood and the sweat and the tears to be able to do so. And because I'm out here in the trenches by myself, I can't do this, because I know you send help. And because I know you send help and I don't have it right now, then this ain't it. It's not working. It's not working. So we shut it down. We shut it down. Last year, I told everyone we're shutting it down. And by everyone, I started telling clients, like, hey, you know, well, some of the volunteers that kind of been around for a while, but I started letting them know, like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do this next year. When this lease is up, this is it. And this is it. We were down to one home by early 2023. We were down to the one home. Well, 2022, we were down to the one home. And then in 2023, I was like, this is it. We're getting down to the wire. And when we had the last group graduate at the end of the school year of 2023, right before they graduated, I let them know. A few months before, I said, I just want to let you guys know that you guys will be the last group. And when you guys are done, then I'm closing this home, and this will be it. And this will be the end of our transitional housing, because I can't keep doing this. And then with the rate of housing right now, there's no way I can keep this affordable for everyone. It's time for you guys to go. When you guys go, like, that's it. So that's it, right? Now, I say all this because I share all this because, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I think we don't want to tell the truth about things. We want to get on social media and we want to show, like, all the glitz and glams of everything. And nobody wants to really tell you, like, the behind the scenes type stuff. And I'm gonna tell you, like, it ain't all pretty. It's messy. It's really, really messy. But here's the thing. I had enough faith in God to still follow those plans to close. I had enough faith in God to follow the plans to close, because I didn't just walk away. I didn't just wake up one morning and just say, shut it down. Things were systematically done because I labored. I sat down and labored before God in prayer and understood how this was going to happen and when it was going to happen, so much so that I understand how it's going to reset and rebuild. And there's space to be able to do so. Because there's a difference between quitting and understanding when you have to, like, pump the brakes. And in this instance, it was like, hold on, God, we need to reset. Like this is not it. Something's not working. And so one, stepping back and being able to go back and look at the plan and realizing like, hey, well, wait a minute, this is what you said. And then like, this is what we're doing, but this is not what we're doing. And this is not what we're doing. And well, what happened? And why are we not doing this? How did we get away from that? Well, how did this creep in here? Right. And be able to learn from those lessons. That's all vital, so that now as we're rebuilding in faith, things can be stronger than they were before. Things can be way stronger than they were before. And not just things can be stronger, but even I can be stronger than it was before. And then pay attention to certain things, right? Because things has to be a certain way. I have to follow this plan. And part of following the plan is making sure that I have the right people, the right help. It has to be the right help this time. There's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas. There's people that have come in my life, and there's people that I've known for a long time that have given me ideas. Some I listened to, some I didn't listen to. Some I'm glad I didn't listen to. Some really thought that I was just, being once again rebellious. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. Why? Because, on the tail end of this, I already realized that listening to some of this stuff is not going to work because it's deviating from the plan. Now, the flip side to that is, we also have to understand that we don't do things in isolation, because we have to be able to rightfully discern when people are coming in to be helpful. Because there are some people who were very much so in my inner circle who thought that they had the right idea for how things that were supposed to move forward. And the truth is that they did not. And God had to send outside help for me to kind of see that we needed to shift. And that took a lot of faith also. That took faith also. And it's faith in God. Because sometimes, we just get a little too familiar with our circle. And our circle gets a little too familiar with us. And so that's one of the things that I took into account. And that's why I was able to make some of the decisions that I needed to make, and not just make them, in 2023, but realize that in 2022, when I really made the decision, because most people think I just made the decision in 2023, but the truth is I really made the decision in 2022. I really made a decision in 2022. That I was going to make that was going to happen. So, but I had to seek counsel, wise counsel outside of my circle to be able to do that. And part of being able to do that, seeking counsel outside of my circle, caused me to look at my circle and disband my circle. I had to disband my circle. Yeah. Talk about a faith move. I had to disband my circle. And then once I disbanded my circle, then I could sit down with God and make the strategy to start closing the doors. And the strategy to close the doors was pretty much a soft closing so that we could reopen. Because all we did was close the home, but the ministry still stands. because now we're able to rebuild, and we're able to rebuild stronger than ever. So we'll be going on this journey of rebuilding, resetting, revamping. And part of it is getting back to the basics. And getting back to the basics is, why did we start this? We're making a difference. We're serving others. And it's really about that, the ministry of Christ. It's about the ministry of Christ. If Christ is not revealed in the work that we are doing, then we're not doing it. Plain and simple. We went out a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't a big plan. We packaged up some meals, we packaged up some hygiene products, and we hit the streets. And we served, those who were in need. That's it. And we brought a smile and hope and light to those who were in need. And that's what it's about. That's what it was about. That's what it's always been about. Because when I was 15 and I said I wanted to let people know that this is not the end for you. That's really what it was. It's just that at 15 I didn't really understand that, right? But when we grow and as we get older, we start understanding because as we grow, our language changes, right? We become more mature in our language, right? More mature in our understanding. And so God reveals things differently. And so the revelation to that is being pretty much like my basketball coach and being help, realizing what help looks like. And help is different for different people. And so for those that we were able to go on a street and help, it was bringing light and hope to those who were suffering. And that's all it was. Because even when I was in seminary, there was a statement, my ministry statement, about what I wanted to do, because God would help reveal that, right? God will reveal that to me. And again, a mature language, more mature than what I understood at 15. And so it really goes back to like, oh, this is really what it was about. It wasn't really about the homes. It was about the difference that we were making. And we could do that with or without the homes. We had an opportunity to open up our homes again last fall, but the truth is, it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. But the ministry still works because we have donations that are coming in. We're able to, help people who, give us a call, send us an email. We had a family that called and, they were like, hey, they just moved into their own home. And there's things that they needed. And so by stocking them up with months of supplies that are needed, they're able to reallocate those funds to take care of what they need, because they use all their money to move in. And if they use all their money to move in, then how can they eat? How can they buy the necessities that they need? So by providing them with those necessities, now they can keep their lights on. Now they can pay the water bill. Now they can, mom can put gas in her car to get back and forth to work. Now she can pay the daycare bill, right? And she can do that because we stocked her up with things like laundry detergent and, hygiene products and all of those things that should not be a luxury in our lives. But for some, they're not affordable. It's really that simple, because that's how we're making a difference. That's how we're making a difference. And we're doing that with quite a few women. It's that simple. It is spreading the love of Christ. Some people, have platforms, and some people, are in the four walls of the church, and that's their ministry. Some people are called to stand behind a microphone and preach the gospel every week. That is what God has called them to do. For some of us, we're called to be out here in the street. I'm in my t-shirt and my chucks, and I go out and literally take food and hygiene products to those who don't have any. whether they are on the street or whether they are in their own homes. But nonetheless, it is bringing change where change is needed. We all have work to do. So as much as my business failed last year, I'm grateful because what it did was it brought me back to ministry. It brought me back to ministry. And so I'm grateful for failing forward. I'm grateful for God's redeeming grace, because we started out as, it started out as ministry. It turned into a business, and we started following, all the laws of business and all these things, and trying to do the fundraisers and all the things that a nonprofit does. We're ministry first. We're ministry first. And so failure is good, because failure helps us to reflect. There is no perfection. It's okay to make mistakes, because when we make mistakes, we're reminded of where we're supposed to be. It helps us to turn around. It helps us to turn around. I'm grateful that for me, God was there for me, that God allowed me to do that. And I'm grateful for His grace and His mercy to be able to do that. So, the next time you think about failure, embrace it. Embrace the failure. And then take a step back. Because when you have failure that comes up, it is a reminder that, hey, something is not where it's supposed to be. And for me, when things started slipping away back in 2021, late 2021, and it wasn't really working, and I was running around trying to keep it all together, it's because, hey, it really wasn't the plan we were supposed to be doing. And as much as, great things were happening and people were like, oh man, you're changing lives or what have you. Yeah, but the focus started changing. The focus started changing because it was like, man, if we don't have enough people, then we don't get to raise enough money. And if we don't have this, and the truth is we don't need all of that, because when we started out with one, that's all that ever mattered. When we first started out, we was out in the trenches during COVID. And when we prayed and said, God, we just want to go out there and we just want to help people who don't have the help, supplies was coming in. Whenever we prayed to do something in the name of Christ, we never went without. We never went without. So whenever we prayed to continue the ministry of Jesus, it always worked out. But when it started slipping away and we tried to hold on to the name, when we tried to hold on to the business, when we tried to hold on to the image, when we tried to hold on to all of that stuff that doesn't matter, it didn't work. It didn't work. And so I'm glad for failure, because failure helped turn it all around. And failure helped us get back to our first love, which was spreading the gospel, the unadulterated gospel. And the unadulterated gospel is Jesus. And every time we go out now, that's what we do. We give Jesus. That's simple. So, glad I failed, because now it's been redeemed, and that's what it is. So remember that. If you try to walk around in perfection, trust me, you are never giving anyone your testimony. But if you allow yourself to walk and possibly fail, then you can give someone not just your testimony, but the testimony of God's redeeming love, God's redeeming grace in your life. Be blessed. Bye.